Hello, lovely listener. This is Editing Jenny from the Bookcast Club speaking. Now that we've moved to monthly episodes and don't have to edit like little demons, you have the pleasure of the occasional contextual introduction from the editor. We welcome friend of the pod, Cobby, this month for a bumper episode chatting Wuthering Heights, the book, versus Wuthering Heights, in quotation marks, the movie. I just want to apologise for my awful sound in this one. I must have hit record with the wrong mic and I do not have the technical know-how to fix it more than I have. So enjoy me sounding like I recorded from the bath. But the main reason for me chatting to you right now is that we are giving away an official exclusive, there's only 8 out there in the world, Bookcast Club hoodies. If you want to see the hoodie in question, you can pop over to our Instagram or Patreon. We have one unisex medium to give away and one simple question for you to answer. You can find the link to the entry form in our Instagram bio or by signing up to our free Patreon tier. You will need to listen to April's episode to get the answer, or if you've been around a long time, you can probably guess. The only other entry criteria we have is that you join our free tier on Patreon. Entries close at 23:59 GMT on the 17th of June, and all the T's and C's are in our Patreon or Instagram post. Good luck, and we hope you enjoy our Wuthering Heights chat.
Hello, welcome to the Bookcast Club, a podcast for people who like to read books. My name is Sarah and I am joining you from the Netherlands, and today I have Jenny with me, joining you from Norwich, and Cobby. Very happy to be welcoming Cobby back. She is joining us today from Sydney. Hi all.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Today is the May episode and we're going to be talking about the Wuthering Heights film and book, which we're very excited to be discussing. So thanks you guys so much for... I'm not going to thank Jenny, but thanks, Cobby, for coming.
For reading the book.
My pleasure.
How is everyone?
Very well.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I'm a bit daunted by this episode. I wasn't when I suggested it. I was like, it'd be great. And then I saw the film. I was like, I can't wait to discuss this. Then I finished the book, and now I'm like, oh gosh, what have I started? So good luck leading this one,
Thank
Sarah.
you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we planned this episode a long time ago, basically when we caught wind that there would be a new, very gothic-y release of Wuthering Heights, and we were like, that's for us. But then it came out, and then there's been a lot of conversation, which we were not anticipating, so it's going to be rather more a serious discussion than we were anticipating, but that's fine. How are you though, Cobb? What's happening? What updates can you bring us since you were last on the pod?
Really none.
I don't know.
Just that Wuthering Heights has occupied occupied all of my thoughts for several weeks now. Not really, but almost. I've seen the movie.
Yes, me too. I nearly saw it twice, to be honest. Like, I really wanted to see it again last night, but I was couldn't get my partner to go. He was like, no.
Did he not want to?
He didn't want to see it at all?
He just didn't feel like... to be honest, I didn't give very much notice, and I was like, I want to see it tonight, and he was like, I don't really feel like going out to the cinema tonight.
Right now.
I'm in bed.
Yeah, he was like, I'm just gonna go hang out with this friend of mine and play a game, and I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, but I think he's happy to watch it at another time. But my interest in it will probably disappear after this episode, as tends to happen. So I hadn't actually read the book before we started this episode. You had another comment?
No.
How about you, Jen?
I had. So I read it, which was really interesting because we'll get on to what we thought of the book, but in summary, I downgraded my star rating having read it the second time. So I first read it about 10 years ago, I reckon, and it was on holiday. I remember reading it by the pool, and I must have just blasted my way through it, which was not my experience this time round.
Yep.
Should we introduce the book? I mean, I feel like everybody probably has heard of it, but I have pulled together a very quick summary. So Wuthering Heights is the only novel written by Emily Bronte, first published in 1847 under the pseudonym Ellis Bell, which I hadn't realised. The story follows 2 large rural estates on the moors of West Yorkshire and the families who own them, the Earnshaws and the Lintons, along with their complicated and often intense relationship with Heathcliff, a foster child raised by the Earnshaws. Exploring themes such as love, obsession, revenge, and forgiveness, the novel reflects elements of romantic and Gothic traditions and is widely regarded as a major work of English literature.
Yeah, I've also got a note here that says that when it first came out, it was quite baffling to the readers about what it was actually trying to say. And this is like, as you just said, Jen, it's her only novel, but there's actually very few personal writings of her that have survived. So even now, a lot of the stuff that you read into like what she was trying to say and stuff is very speculative, because there's very little is actually known about what she was actually trying to say. Which is interesting because there's a lot in the book and a lot to read into. So obviously it's like this. Famously, the sort of the novel is about this relationship between Cathy and Heathcliff. There is going to be a little bit of confusion because unfortunately there's multiple characters with the same name. So we have to try to be really clear about who we're actually talking about when we discuss the book, which is very...
It confused me the whole bloody time. And I was reading it on the Kindle. There is a family tree right at the back. I don't know if you found it.
I had to look up a family tree immediately
at the time.
Yeah, it's very confusing. So there's multiple people called Heathcliff. There's two Catherines who are main characters, and people get married, obviously, and then the narrator to their cousins, please. And then the narrator immediately starts to refer to them as like Mrs. New surname, and you're like,
by their surname or whatever.
So like the second Catherine becomes Mrs. Heathcliff at some point. Like it's extremely confusing. So how the actual book, I'll do a super quick plot summary, see how I go doing this on the fly. So it's actually narrated by a man called Lockwood, and it starts off by this big house called Thrushcross Grange being rented by him, and so he's like moved into this area, and he meets his landlord, who's this like horrible mean person called Heathcliff, and then he goes to his new sort of like place that he's renting, and then he starts talking to the housekeeper, who's called Nellie Dean or Ellen, and he asks her about what's been going on, like why is Heathcliff so grumpy, like what's the deal with this like weird these weird moors and these weird houses, and what's the deal, and then Nellie starts telling him about what's been going on in his house that he's now leasing and the house where Heathcliff lives for the past like 30 years. And that's the novel. The whole novel basically is her recounting to this tenant what has been happening. And then so the whole story is kind of encompassed in her narration to him, which happens over like a couple of weeks, which I found to be a highly bizarre way to frame the novel. But anyway, so she's mostly telling him. I would say 80% of the novel is her telling himself, and then it interjects going back to the present day occasionally, and then right at the end it picks up back into present day. So I found that a very odd way to read the book. But anyway, so the story starts off with set at this place called Wuthering Heights, and it's about the Earnshaws, and the Earnshaws have a young daughter called Catherine, and they at some point adopt a foster child called Heathcliff, who's of like sort of unknown origins, which we'll get into later. And so Cathy and Heathcliff like grow up together as children, basically become super, super attached. And then later, what happens? How does Cathy actually end up at I can't remember. How does Cathy actually end up at Thrushcross Grange?
She breaks an ankle. She injures herself, or she becomes unwell. I think in the movie she breaks an ankle, but she maybe becomes unwell, and she is looked after by them and restored to health.
Yeah, that's right. They're very poor. They're the Mr. Earnshaw's gamblers, but they were rich. But Mr. Earnshaw was gambling all their money away, and so she ends up becoming very, very sick and going to stay with the people at the next house, which is really big and huge, which is Thrushcross Grange. And there she, the son of that family falls in love with her, and then they end up getting married. So she moves there. So then Heathcliff is at one house. She's at this other, now married as like Catherine Linton, she's now called. And then eventually Heathcliff goes away. He gets really rich. He comes back. He then owns Wuthering Heights. The original Catherine dies after having a child who's also called Catherine, right? So it's a very confusing plot. And then Heathcliff basically he also has a couple of children at this point. He's extremely grumpy. He's furious that Catherine's died. You know, they're star-crossed, all this kind of stuff. And then Catherine's child, called Cathy, and Heathcliff's child, who's called Heathcliff, end up sort of getting to know each other when they're not really supposed to. And then they end up, then the second half of the book like turns to their sort of story. So there's kind of two generations of Cathy and Heathcliff basically. So the original Cathy and Heathcliff are the ones that the ones that are so are sort of well known, what the novel is actually well known for. But then a large chunk of the book is actually about their children, who are also called Cathy and Heathcliff.
About half the book.
Yeah, so it's extremely confusing. I hope that was a helpful summary. It's extremely confusing to read.
There's one more child in between, isn't there?
Yes. Yeah.
There is
Hareton.
Who does Linton? Who does Linton belong to?
No,
Linton is Heathcliff.
Linton's the first name of Heathcliff's son.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So Isabella. Have we mentioned Isabella?
No, I haven't mentioned Isabella. I was just trying to stick on the Cathy and Heathcliff.
I know, I'm sorry. Isabella is Edgar's sister.
Yeah.
And a big, part of the book is that Heathcliff is seeking revenge because he's so angry and upset and alone. And he marries Isabella in like a move of revenge. They have a child called Linton. Good Lord. And Linton, like, he manipulates the situation so that little Cathy marries Linton, and it's all to do with like the like inheritance of the estate.
Yeah. Yep.
But there is that then. Is it Heathcliff? Who's Hareton?
Hareton is the other son of Heathcliff.
Hareton's the son of Catherine's biological brother. So he's he's the real heir, actually, of Wuthering Heights, but then he's kind of usurped by Heathcliff, and he's like not given a proper education because Heathcliff becomes like lord of the manor there, and so he lives as almost like a servant.
Yeah, and Heathcliff like manipulates the marriage between his like sickly little child Linton and Cathy to inherit Wuthering Heights, and the fortune or lack of that exists. And when sickly Linton dies, then Cathy and Hareton, the original Earnshaw kind of child, they're the ones that have that kind of relationship in the second half of the book. They're like secret relationship, and they get married in the end, I think. It's really confusing, and it's confusing the whole way through. And it just must be of its time that's how you refer to people. But I was like, this isn't helpful, and this narrative isn't helpful. Like a narrator through a narrator through a narrator.
Yeah.
I was like, this is really, really hard work. I don't remember it being such hard work the first time I read it. But I am a decade older.
And tired. I think a lot of that is maybe born of the fact that you have a servant narrating it. So obviously the servant is going to refer to everyone very formally. So she calls everyone Mr. X, Mrs. X, which just creates like more and more confusion, because even though she's been raising Cathy for her entire life, she immediately starts calling her Mrs. Heathcliff once she gets married.
Yes.
Even though she like nursed her or was her like childhood friend. So it's very bizarre.
I feel like if it was a modern day book, the writer would take a bit of creative license and not do that in order for it not to be so confusing.
And I think that's what they hardcore did with the movie, because it would have been, obviously they could call people by, it would be contextually obvious who they were talking about, but even having that many characters and about 4 or 5 people who are arguably main characters would just not have been possible, and I think that's why they just only adapted half the book, because it's not really Wuthering Heights, it's the first half.
Tell me how you found the actual reading of the book. So I found it is very confusing. So I found I had to read it quite slowly. I found the writing itself to be a little bit hysterical. Like I got a little bit, as I was reading it, I would get a little bit tired of it, because the way all the characters react feels very like high energy all the time. Like everyone's always shouting at each other, and it feels
very
like
heightened.
Yeah, it just feels hectic for the whole book. I found it really almost dizzying as I was reading it. It just felt very like
just exhausting.
It was exhausting. So there's just sort of and often I actually had to read. I reread multiple chapters, because the things that were very dramatic, there would be long scenes where everyone was arguing, but then the parts where something actually very significant would happen would be quite small. So like someone dying, for example, would happen in like one sentence. but then there'd be an enormously long scene about, I don't know, someone not being allowed to eat, having to skip a meal or not skip a meal or something. There's a lot of talk about skipping meals or not skipping meals or being down in the parlor or not being there. So those would be kind of like extolled in detail, extolled in detail, but like a death would be very sort of skimmed over. So then I would sort of be reading the next chapter, I'd be like, oh, hang on, I've missed something deeply significant, or who has died? Was it which one of the 400 people called Heathcliff have actually died here? That kind of thing. That was my general feeling of it.
Which Catherine?
Yeah. Who is Catherine? What did you think, Cobb? How did you find it?
It was okay. I always anticipate if I read a classic novel that's written in that time, I just anticipate that I'll struggle. And so the experience was fine compared to that. I just sort of take it for granted that at times I'll get confused because of things like saying Mrs. Heathcliff, those kinds of things. But it was okay. But I do think that it's maybe typical of that kind of novel of its time where there's so many moving parts. So when it does get adapted into a movie, you just can't really retain all of those characters and all of that complexity. Maybe you could do it if you had like a BBC miniseries. And I know it's been adapted in the past, maybe in that format, but yeah, I think for a movie it's too much.
Yeah, I have to say I have no beef with them dropping stuff for a film. I think that's totally fine. Yeah. What did you think, Jen?
Well, yeah, like I said, it was a second read for me, and I downgraded my star rating. Yeah, I just found it really hard work. It took me forever to get through. I remember I put on one of those YouTube videos where you're like reading with somebody, and I read for an hour, and I was like, wow, look at me. And then when I looked at my Kobo, it was like, you've read 26 pages. I was like, what the hell? Like, how big is this book? I don't remember it being so big, but it was just taking me forever. And actually, it was kind of slow, kind of boring in places, and I didn't have an enjoyable reading experience this time around. And I saw the film first because obviously I felt like I'd read the book, so I saw the film. And I think I was then reading it from a perspective that, yeah, the whole time I was like, well, thank God they got rid of those people, and thank God they changed this bit, and thank God that wasn't in there. And I was highlighting bits that I could pick up from the film. Yeah, and then the second half came, and I was just not that interested. So yeah, it was overall really hard work. I think I enjoyed more reading like discourse around the movie and how upset everybody was about it. And it's been building up for months and months and months, right? So whenever it was announced that Emerald Fennell was doing this film, everybody got kind of quite uptight about it because of her last film, Saltburn, which I don't know if you've seen that, but the vibes are very similar. And definitely set my expectations. So first of all, everyone was really upset that she was the one like adapting it, even though like it's out of copyright, right? So anybody can do it. And then it was in quotation marks. So everybody was getting their knickers in a twist about it being in quotation marks. And what did that mean? And I enjoyed that way more and reading all the different opinions than I did reading the book.
I quite liked the book.
Did you?
Did you?
I found it genuinely fascinating because I had assumed going into it that it would be. So I felt like forewarned that the characters aren't likable. But what I thought that meant was that they were kind of petulant, boorish, characters
like Mr. Darcy.
Time. Yeah, like more like Mr. Rochester. And that just wasn't the case at all. Like these, or likable. You're meant to like them, but the modern reader finds them unpalatable. That kind of thing. No. Like I don't think that's these characters at all. No. They're awful people. They're like it's like they're on ice or something. Like what you said before is so true. Every interaction is. The emotions like turned up to 9,000. No one can say a civil word to anyone else. And some people are worse than that. Like Heathcliff's he's a psychopath pretty much. the stuff he pulls in the second half of the book is just like really awful, you know. And he's really he outright says, I'm manipulating all of you to try and get my hands on this money, and he forces people to marry each other. It's mad. And I didn't realize that that was what the book was like at all. And I think that's because it's sold as a romance, which it isn't. And so I found it really fascinating and really inscrutable. I'm not really sure what she was steering at. I think as a modern reader, you can say a lot about the novel, like, oh, it says a lot about the mores of the time and how they can, you know, be quite poisonous and cause people to make bad life decisions and that sort of thing. But I'm not sure that would have been what the author intended. It's really fascinating to me. What do you think? What do you think she meant? What was she getting at with this book?
Completely. Yeah, I was that hysteria. I was like, is this supposed to be, because obviously it feels very un-Victorian in that way, the way everyone's like reacting and shouting, and I don't think I've read a novel of this time period that's got people behaving like that. And so the whole time I'm like, is this supposed to be a commentary about people in like the upper classes, and like how, like, is this supposed to be almost like comedic or like ludicrous? Is this like a class commentary? Is that what I'm reading? Is this book just the product of someone who lived in a huge amount of isolation and thinks that, like, this is how people deal with conflict? Like, I really couldn't decide between those sort of two interpretations, whether this was some sort of like meta commentary or whether she was just like a little bit too isolated as a person.
It's so fascinating because whilst they're a lot and a bit much at times, they're quite like well-drawn characters, I would say. And it's really interesting to me, you know, what was the author drawing on to create those characters? Exactly as you said, like, was it that she was imagining these kind of almost demonic personalities? Or was she making, like, is it class commentary? Is it race commentary? Is it, like, I think people have done like feminist readings of it. It's really interesting. And then it's also kind of a story about revenge.
Yeah, definitely. The female characters in it are they're all very well drawn, but the female characters are extremely well drawn. So it's an unusually sort of even book, and it doesn't do a lot of those things where it's like, oh, and then this man solved the problem. Like, a lot of the male characters really like create or worsen the problems, and you don't feel that gender imbalance that's often sort of inherently present in these kind of novels. I would say, where you can see that the author obviously thinks that the women are a bit silly. You know, I didn't feel that coming from this, and I've also even experienced that with books written by women in this time period, where they're obviously like, oh, then there's silly women and they're whims. It wasn't like that really.
A bit like that, but then everyone else is as well.
Yeah, I really read her as being like, I thought she was like one of those sort of silly rich people, kind of like Linton is kind of the same. The child Linton. This is Catherine the child I'm talking about, not Catherine the adult. They're both kind of ludicrous.
Okay, Kathy Junior. Oh,
Kathy Junior. Let's call her
Child Catherine.
Yeah. Which Kathy?
Yeah.
It's almost like there's three Kathys, because there's child Kathy, adult Kathy, and then there's Kathy Junior. Yeah.
Baby Kathy. Yeah. It's so confusing.
Yeah.
I highlighted some bits of the book because I remember now we read this. Remember, I used to run that Gothic fiction book club, Sarah. That's what we read this for, Wuthering Heights, years ago. And even in the first, like, this is chapter 3. So I think this is, oh my God, what's the actual narrator called? The guy we're seeing this.
Mr. Lockwood. One of the only unique names in the book.
Yeah. I feel like he must be sleeping in Catherine's old bedroom and he sees the ghost or what he's dreaming, I don't know. And I highlighted this. So, finding it useless to attempt shaking the creature off, I pulled its wrists onto the broken pane and rubbed it to and fro till the blood ran down and soaked the bedclothes. I was like, wow, Emily Bronte, wild. I feel like this must have been quite shocking when it came out. And then there's a lot of reference. I don't think slut means the same thing as it does now. Maybe it does. I don't know.
It could, though, the way it gets used.
It could. It does, right? she degenerates into a mere slut. I was like, oh, okay, using that kind of language. There's another one. I obviously like this sentence. Damned, thou saucy witch, he replied. And I just felt like she must have, yeah, ruffled some feathers, is my feeling when she wrote this.
Yeah, I think maybe that is the case, that it did have that reception and people were clutched their pearls.
Shocked.
Yeah, I think
oh,
so.
Yeah.
Apparently, according to this, in Victorian times, the word slut didn't quite have the sexual connotations. So it was meaning like a woman of dirty, slovenly, or untidy habits, a slattern. So it's...
Oh yeah, she definitely uses slattern at some point in this as well. I also highlighted that.
So it means more
I
like
didn't think it quite had
than...
the same meaning. However, contextually, it still fit very well.
I also found it very interesting how well the servants are really well fleshed out, and so much of the book is sort of told from their perspective. They have so many conversations which tell you a lot about like what's actually happening, like the actual sort of Heathcliff, Cathy times two, etc., are all actually quite removed from like the reader's perspective, but really Ellen is the one that from whom you hear everything, and Joseph, the one who's at Heathcliff's house. They're really kind of surprisingly key characters, I think, and they suffer slightly less, not quite, but they don't have quite as much of this kind of like hysterical nonsense as like the others do, which I also thought was interesting. That's really where I really got into like, what is this saying about class, in my mind.
It's definitely more from their perspective, isn't it? Kind of like you say, looking on upon this slightly ridiculous wealthy family situation.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, is it saying, it's tempting to say, maybe as a modern reader, like, or that all of the things that constrain these people at the time, you know, these issues of, like, I guess primarily class, that mean that Heathcliff isn't a suitable person for Catherine to marry. You know, if only that hadn't been the case, they could have just been together and then none of this would have happened. But it sort of doesn't feel like that was really maybe the author's intent. It sort of feels like those characters in particular, it's almost as though they're a little bit sort of fundamentally wrong and a little bit sort of demonic, particularly Heathcliff, but also Cathy. And she, you know, makes like that famous quote about he's more myself than I am, all of that sort of stuff. Like, this is just who these people are. And they're maybe not, you know, maybe it's no one's fault that they're the way they are. This is just how some people behave and act. And ultimately, there's nothing that can be done. They'll just be self-destructive and act in that way. But that seems like a very modern sentiment for the author to have had. But that's sort of how it felt to me reading the book.
Yeah, agree. But yeah, the whole way through I was kind of having thoughts like that and then being like, but is this too 21st century of me? Like, who is this random Victorian Emily Bronte sitting in a house with her sisters for her whole life? It's I was really interested thinking about what she was trying to do with their relationship, actually, because I was just wondering, like, where did this come from? And so I don't know. I really don't know. I really feel like you could sort of read so much into it.
Yeah, it's tempting to think, oh, okay, they have personality flaws. They're passionate people. This is why they behave the way they do, and that the fact that they're capable of like this really deep, and it seems ultimately very genuine love for each other that kind of ultimately destroys both of them, is a redemptive quality. But it doesn't come off that way. Like, that is true. It's not as though Cathy dies and Heathcliff's just like, oh well. You know, ultimately he keeps obsessing over her until it kills him. There's no question. I don't think that she meant for them to be redeemed. I don't think we're meant to feel true sympathy for them. They're not like anti-heroes. They're just the main characters. So it is bizarre to me that people would be tempted to interpret it that way. Like, what is the Kate Bush song about? I'm just so confused now. Read the book.
I can't even begin to imagine what she thought in her mind about romantic love. Like, is it an inherently bad thing? That seems to be almost... yeah. I can't imagine what she thought they deserved or like what...
because, you know, it seems like Edgar, for example, really does love her. So I don't think it's necessarily a rejection of the whole concept of romantic love. I don't think she's saying people should only make political marriages. Necessarily, maybe she is, but it seems like lots of people genuinely love lots of people in this book, and Edgar genuinely loves Kathy, and she just doesn't love him. She's into him. She's into her stepbrother. Unclear what their relationship.
That bit did feel like she was saying, and then she should have been with Edgar, and that would have been so much better. And now she's kind of punished for loving Heathcliff.
Maybe that is the moral.
I wouldn't be surprised, because it feels like it feels a bit more salient, but it just the way that it's delivered is so bizarre.
It definitely leaves me more interested in learning about Emily Bronte than it does dwelling on Wuthering Heights too much. I've never seen it, but there's a film called To Walk Invisible, the Bronte sisters. I don't know if that would kind of allude to their home life and what their home life was, but yeah, I find it way more interesting to kind of think about what Emily Bronte might have been experiencing herself, or trying to achieve with this book, especially as it was her only published novel. It makes me want to read more about her. You could definitely do visits. I don't know where they lived. Where did they live? You can go and visit where they
live in Yorkshire, or
I assume so.
She's just setting the book there.
I'm sure there's a village that everybody kind of does their Bronte pilgrimage to visit. I thought we'd interrupt proceedings here to just do a little plug of our Patreon. We have switched to a monthly format on the main pod, so we're only going to be here once a month, but we will also be on our Patreon once a month. So if you're interested in signing up so you can listen to our bonus episodes, you can do. Our tiers are basically open to all, so you can set what you want to pay to anything that you want, starting from £2 upwards. We have one top tier that's book recommendations and books in the post, but otherwise it's a pay what you want kind of thing. In our bonus episodes is where you'll find all our recent and current read chat. It's where we share the most recommendations, I guess, and where we probably end up discussing DNS, all the random stuff that we don't talk about on the pod ends up on those bonus episodes. So if you're interested, you can do that. I'll pop the Patreon link in our show notes. But we thought we'd give it a little plug, and if you enjoy what we do, then there's more of us over there.
Okay, so let's talk about the film. Let's hold off talking about the casting race conversation. We might do that. We'll do that at the end. We'll talk about the books, the race themes of the book, the race themes of the film, all that kind of stuff. So let's just talk about the rest of the film.
Do you want the Wikipedia film summary?
Sure, you go on.
Wuthering Heights, stylized with quotation marks, is a 2026 romantic period drama film produced, written and directed by Emerald Fennell. Loosely based on the 1847 novel by Emily Bronte, the film is a reinterpretation intended by Fennell to, in quotation marks, recreate the feeling of a teenage girl reading this book for the first time. Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi star as Catherine Earnshaw and Heathcliff.
So let's first talk about. I'm really excited to talk about this film with you guys. By the way, I'm really excited. How did you find the feel of the film? So the cinematography, the visuals, the music, all that kind of stuff. I love this film, by the way.
I loved it. We should probably think, Cobby, what did you think?
I did really like it. It's not a criticism, but I was disappointed that it wasn't more like the book, in the sense that it didn't fully, it a bit reimagined, or a lot reimagined, the two main characters, and and of course, and again, not a criticism, but probably by necessity, it cut half the book out. And I felt like what it did is it merged a few characters together. So Kathy, it kind of, the movie character has qualities of both, maybe, and big time Heathcliff and Hareton are kind of mushed together a bit as well. And also the horrible brother Hindley and the dad are one character, and actually the dad of the movie is more like the brother. And and you've got to do what you've got to do when you're making a movie. I assume you don't have endless time to include all of this all of this plot, all of these characters, you've got to cut it down. But I was sad because I found the repugnant nature of the two characters so fascinating. They were a lot more sympathetic in the movie. So that was one change. But I think she's just reimagined the movie she's reimagined the story basically from the ground up and made it her own. And I don't think, I think if you're a massive Bronte purist, you're not going to be happy about that. But people do that all the time with works of literature. They reinvent things, they reimagine things. And I think the end product is really good. So, yeah, I don't come at it I wouldn't criticize it from that angle.
No, it's nice to hear your opinion first, I think, because I loved it, but I haven't seen her first film, but I really like Saltburn, which I feel like if you've seen that film,
I've seen both of them.
Another one.
Ooh.
Oh, have you?
Promising Young Woman. Have you seen that,
yes.
Sarah?
No, I haven't.
No, I haven't seen any other.
I really want
films
to.
of hers.
Yeah, you should. It's a lot. They're both a lot. And actually, compared to those movies, this didn't feel like a lot.
Quite tame,
at all.
Right?
This was really tame, yeah. Which is, again, not a criticism.
To you, Sarah, no, this is like a chaste version. So I really loved Saltburn, and there'll be people that have seen that film that are like, what is wrong with you? But I loved it. I like her stylized approach. I like that it's outrageous. I don't know. I just like stuff like that. So I'm glad to hear your perspective first, Cobby, because I could end up just gushing about the film because I really, really loved it. But probably for different reasons. Probably because I've totally disconnected it from the book and I just watched it for what it was. And I love her.
But I think that's a good way. I also think she's really just so talented and such an incredible storyteller. And I think I was almost expecting something like 10 times as intense. And maybe it was pared back because that was maybe a little bit of and
I wonder if she was told to.
Yeah, I don't know. It was great and
she's already upsetting people.
Visually stunning, and I'm not from Yorkshire. I know that's surprising for people to hear listening to my accent, but I did feel like I felt transported in terms of the place to that place. Yeah, apart from not everyone had a Yorkshire accent. Also, maybe we can talk about that.
Not everyone's accents are great either, but yeah. And actually, you talking about the fact that she's smushed characters together, which I clocked more with maybe Kathy and maybe Heathcliff. But that's really clever. For her to have done that. I mean, she was really criticized for doing it, but I'm like, is that not really smart? I wouldn't be able to do that. Kind of meld these characters together to then kind of end up with a similar plot. I'm in awe of her. I think she's amazing. So I try not to gush too much.
Particularly for Mr. Earnshaw, who played by Martin Clunes, that was a very smart decision.
How good was he?
Oh my God, he was 20 out of 10. Martin, you knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. So gross at points in it as well. It's
so
what
amazing.
good casting.
Yeah. So the cinematography and stuff, the gothic vibe of it that you were just talking about, Cobb, as well, I really liked that. I thought it was really, really well done. The music, was it Dua Lipa who did the music?
No, Charlie
XCX.
The music.
That one. So good. I thought that vibes of it were really, really good. Really, really well done. Yeah, so you have this sort of so Martin Clunes' character, who's Mr. Earnshaw, he played that phenomenally well. I was really surprised as well. I was watching it is that Doc Martin? This is crazy. Yeah. And he plays it just it's a sort of a new commitment, new level of the commitment to the role. It was just unbelievably good. Let's talk about how well she translated the kind of the book in terms of the moods of the characters and the hysteria and that kind of thing. So we were talking before about how the characters are hysterical and in the book, and the way that they sort of have conversations and stuff is ridiculous. How did you find that was in the film? What did you think of the translation of that? Maybe start with you, Jen.
I think Cobby said this earlier. I feel like that is toned down a bit. And what I feel she did in the film is because I was reading the book thinking, wow, Emily Bronte amped that up to 1,000 like really quickly. Like they don't have that whole kid backstory, do they? Where they're like really close as children, and then you see that kind of like relationship developing. Like it almost goes full on switch to Heathcliff losing his mind because she's chosen to marry somebody else. And I felt like the build up to that moment was not as deep in the book. I felt like it was done, and that makes sense. Like the film was the first half of the book, right? You know, it finishes when Kathy dies, adult Kathy dies, the end. So she's got more time to build up what she's obviously imagined their relationship must have been like children. Yeah, I can't remember what you asked me now.
The hysteria of the kind of hysterical.
Yeah. So actually, any of their reactions, because they do get quite hysterical, they get very vengeful. There's a whole switch with Kathy when Isabella's like obviously attracted to Heathcliff, and so she suddenly becomes really like manipulative, and it all made a lot more sense in the film, whereas I felt like some of that in the book was lost, and I don't really know why. Probably because she did skip, like you said, she spends a lot of time on detail that probably wasn't particularly necessary to some of the character
Parlor
development.
politics.
Yeah.
I thought a lot of it was really cleverly, because there's a lot of obviously conversations and stuff that happen in the book that don't happen in the film, of course. And I thought a lot of that hysterical aspect of that chaos, I thought she'd really cleverly translated it into the visuals. So like when adult Kathy moves to the Lintons' house, and the way that they live is so like lavish and cartoonish, like it's full, it's so weird. I really liked how she did that. I thought that she was maybe taking some of those themes that are done through conversation in the novel, and she makes them, they just live in this kind of like, it's like a dollhouse. You go, because they even have a dollhouse of their house, and you can't even tell the difference between the dollhouse and the real house because it's so sort of ridiculously orned. So I really liked how she'd done that. Actually, I really like that kind of surreal aspect of it as well, because the book also feels quite surreal and bizarre in terms of how people actually are. So I like how she translated that so visually. I think it was a really smart
It
shift.
made me think now that even the like grotesque wallpaper, it's not wallpaper, it's like it's like squidgy, I don't know, panelled walling that's been made to look like her skin, and I'm like, oh yeah, but those little kind of visual things where you're like, yeah, this is creepy, and you've gone a little bit too far, and I can see why maybe she isn't into you all that much. Like, yeah, you saying it's been done with the visuals, very clever.
Because in the book they throw food, and like it's ridiculous. They're just like, no, like it's like, I assume that's not true at the time. It's like madness.
It's like they're on drugs. It's like they're taking methamphetamine. That's the honestly, that is how mostly Kathy and Heathcliff, but also some other people in the movie behave. Book. And in the movie, they're much more rational and reasonable and sympathetic, which is a more pleasant viewing experience, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I think they were sensible changes.
I really meant to watch some of the other adaptations before we recorded this, because I remember watching one. It was like an ITV drama, and Tom Hardy played Heathcliff.
2011, is that one?
It was quite a long time ago. It might be older than that. He's quite young in it. And I really wanted to watch some of them back because surely they cover the whole span of the book in a TV series. So I'd be really interested to see kind of like how they handle that maddening of Heathcliff. It makes more sense in the film, I felt, than it did in the book. I felt like he was suddenly obsessed with her out of nowhere.
In the book. Yeah, I think the building is better in the book. In the film. Oh, God.
We're going to keep doing that.
It does sort of in the book and not in the movie because they've gotten rid of these characters. But there's quite a lot about the childhood relationships of Kathy, Heathcliff, and the other people. So Linton is there when they're children. He doesn't just move in when everyone's like in their 30s. and also her brother Hindley. And that is a bit contextualizing, and it kind of foreshadows what both Kathy and Heathcliff's sort of future behaviour is going to be like, because Heathcliff is like this psychopath. He gets beaten up. They say they're actually really mean, genuinely mean to him. And you're like, oh, this is terrible. These people are being so ungenerous to this poor boy. And then he just like balls up his hatred and spits it back at them, kind of thing. And that's very much his character. He doesn't care what you do to him. He's going to do it back to you 1,000 times worse. But that was for me, like the tenor of that first bit of the book when they do talk about their childhoods.
Yeah, less about kind of Kathy and Heathcliff developing a relationship, isn't it? And more why he kind of goes down this revenge kind of path.
And it does talk about them being very close, but it's more them against maybe Linton and Hindley. You know, it's that sort of dynamic. They're kind of allies. And they run off and they hang out in the moors together all day and no one knows where they are. I agree, the movie definitely spent more time on developing the childhood part of that relationship, but obviously by necessity, because it's not including those characters. It didn't have the childhood. Kathy and Heathcliff are even more likable. They're like just these innocent children, whereas actually in the book they're already a little bit evil. You know what I mean?
And obviously, like Nellie, her character's totally different in the film. So she is in the film, but she's more the plot device, I guess. Like, in order that Kathy and Heathcliff are kept separate at the end. Whereas that doesn't happen in the book. She doesn't, like, that doesn't happen at all.
Sorry, she does do a lot of telling on them. Like, she'll tell her master, like, she'll tell Mr. Linton what's happening between the young Kathy and Heathcliff, but it reads more as like she's just doing what she's supposed to be doing. Like,
Yeah,
it's not
it's
her
the job.
It's not within her
servant, right?
job description to like keep secrets or whatever.
She maybe does interfere with when Linton Jr., as in Heathcliff's son, and Kathy Jr., when they're corresponding, because there's this long period where they're exchanging letters. Heathcliff wants that to happen because that's part of his, you know, his Machiavellian plan to get his hands on all the money and become sort of lord of this hereditary estate that belonged to these people who've wronged him. And Nellie and also the rest of the Kathy Jr.'s family are trying to stop that. Linton Sr. are trying to stop that happening. So maybe that's where they've again merged the characters. Yeah. I can't quite remember though.
Yeah, there's definitely some things that she does, but exactly like with the letters and stuff. But to me, it read more as like, well, this is obviously silly, rather than like I'm intentionally going to try and like. She doesn't have sort of Heathcliff's intentionality behind it. She's just like, well, this is obviously completely inappropriate, so we're going to stop it. It seems more sort of guardian.
Whereas in the film, like, she is part of Kathy's childhood, and it's suggested that actually Heathcliff came along and then Kathy dropped Nellie, and that's why she's got this like vendetta against her, and she intercepts the letters that Heathcliff is sending Kathy, and they think they're ignoring each other, and then she dies. It's all very sad. Whereas in the book, there is one point where she holds onto a letter from Heathcliff to Kathy saying that Heathcliff is coming, and that he's going to come and meet her. I can't remember what they're doing. Maybe she's going to tell him that she's pregnant or something. But she lets Kathy know at the last minute that Heathcliff is like hiding behind the curtain. And that's the only point where she does something like slightly, not even manipulative, but just doesn't hand the letter that she should have handed over.
I did read some hot takes of her. Some people do think she's maybe an unreliable narrator or a bit of a conniving character, and on reflection maybe there is some more nuance than I gave her credit for in the book, because when I read the book I was like, well, at least there's one sane person and it's Nellie. But yeah, maybe sometimes she interferes in a slightly ungenerous or unhelpful way, but then that's definitely what's happening in the movie, where she's a way more complex character. But still some of the essence of the original character was definitely there, which I thought was, quite well done. I liked that character a lot.
Yeah, she has. It's so frustrating reading from her perspective in the book because obviously this is just the reality of the time, but she has so little autonomy. It's like, oh, we're going to go here, we're going to go there. You're staying up till this. Now you're awake at 3 a.m. Like I felt so like, oh, it's just exhausting being like in her position. So I don't really all the stuff that she does in the book, which is like, I don't blame her for taking like whatever aspect of autonomy she can possibly get, because the way that they expect them to just be like up and about whenever they need is just like it's hectic. There's one thing where I think Heathcliff wakes her up at like 4 a.m. or something, or she's doing something at 4 a.m. and he's like, "Oh, good, I need you," and I'm like, oh my God, your workday has started.
Here's this child that I'm not really interested in. Can you just raise it? That's Hareton, and that's actually really heartbreaking because she's like, he was like my little boy, and then I was just dismissed from that house, and I had to let him go. And then by the time I came back again, he was like this little savage who was running around, and that was really heartbreaking. Actually,
and there's no redemption for their relationship. I was sort of waiting for them.
No, but
never happens.
Interestingly, there is redemption for Hareton. So in the end, it's almost like this idea of what is your fundamental nature? Like, you can't defeat it. You are who you are. Heathcliff's a psychopath. Kathy kind of is as well. They're the same. But Hareton's not. So even though he's belittled and treated with no worth by Heathcliff and not even given an education, eventually he rises above that. And so does Kathy Jr. So it's a bit redemptive in the book. And obviously they just don't exist in the movie. So it's just a tragedy, the movie.
Yeah, and interestingly circular as well, I thought, the whole Hareton getting Kathy in the end. And
before we move on to the race chat, which I feel like might be quite deep, can we touch on the sexual nature of the film compared to the book? Please.
Please,
can we?
I liked it. I really liked how she just sort of like boldly brought it into the 21st century. I really liked it. I thought it was good.
Because obviously, like, in the book, there is no sexual relationship between Kathy and Heathcliff. And when everyone talks about it being a romantic novel, this is what everybody wants, right? So everybody's getting their knickers in a twist because it's totally different. But I'm like, pretty sure it's what a lot of people kind of in their own heads, like, romanticize the book. And she's just done that, like, on film. But having seen Saltburn, it was quite chaste compared to I was expecting more.
Emerald Fennell doing a Victorian era. She's like
everybody's fully dressed all the time, apart from the skin on the wall, which I suppose is slightly erotic in itself. Like, it's all very suggestive, right? So sticking her finger in the jellified fish and the eggs in the bed.
Sticking their fingers in jelly. Lots of aspic being sort of penetrated. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it was good in a way because there's that bit in the book where Heathcliff does come back and he's and in the movies like got his gold tooth and stuff. And in the book as well, the same transformation happens. And then they do kind of sneak off with each other all the time. And Linton is kind of like, where the fuck are they? You know? And so I guess she's just filled in some blanks there, you know? So I was like, yeah, go on. Like, obviously that would have been a line that a Bronte sister probably couldn't have crossed. So maybe that those were lines that maybe we were meant to read between, but I read some other literary criticism of it that didn't think that at all and agreed that no, there's no sexual relationship. It's not even alluded to, so I don't know.
Yeah, I did read something about, like, she lived such an isolated life, like, would she even know what to write if she thought that might happen? Like, I don't know. She would just be like, well.
I think she would have enjoyed that scene in the barn. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that scene.
The scene in the barn was the one, like, I expected it to keep being like that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
I like how she made it still not a romantic. I don't think it's very romantic.
Oh, yes, that's why I nearly forgot to mention it. What did we think of the like BDSM plot of Heathcliff and Isabella. Obviously, that is not in the book.
That was so weird.
Really I kind of wanted her to push it a bit more and make it a little bit more comedic. Like, I wish she'd given Isabella a little bit more autonomy and to like be kind of leaning into it a little bit more. I think it would have been really funny.
She just hinted at it, didn't she?
Yeah, I wish she'd gone a little bit further with it. I think it could have been extremely funny. Very different from the book. Like, Isabella as a character changes wildly, but
yeah, she does undergo a big change, just not like that.
No, and Heathcliff is like extremely abusive in the book.
Yeah,
like, the highlighted few bits. He like murders a dog at one point and like strings it up in the yard.
Yeah,
like he's
doesn't
awful.
Nellie saves it. Nellie saves the dog.
Oh, it doesn't die. It's just
I don't think it died.
Nellie's like, what in the?
I found it hanging.
She's like, gotta get this down. She's such a good, goodly woman. She's like, let's get this hanging dog down.
That's the thing. Like,
tidy it up.
One of the reasons I don't at all resent that Emerald Fennell's like changed everything pretty much, let's be real, about the book, is because if you're going to make it into a romance, which I did think the movie was, I don't need the real Heathcliff character to be in that. I don't want to imagine anyone having sex with him or being romantically attached to him, because he's we would think of him today as like a domestic abuser. That's how he treats, the women who aren't Kathy, and arguably also Kathy and everyone else who he lives with. And so I think it's kind of appropriate, like, to make it palatable, to make those changes, and maybe as a nod towards that sort of depravity that is in the book and isn't in the movie. She's done this weird BDSM thing with
which I did enjoy. Or maybe that's the dog twist. She doesn't hang the dog. She's like being the dog. Yeah, wild.
Alison Oliver. Yeah, she's
totally different in real life.
Sister in Saltburn.
Yeah. Oh, is she? I didn't
recognize she is.
I know what scene she's in Saltburn.
All right. So speaking of cast, let's talk about the casting controversy, if that's fine with everyone. One of the biggest conversations around this film has been that Heathcliff, the sort of original adult Heathcliff in the book, is very clearly a person of colour, and he is played by Jacob Elordi in this adaptation, who is a very white person. So there's this very complex, and like with everything else in this novel, still have no idea what Emily Bronte is trying to do with it. But there's this like very complex aspect of the novel where this very problematic person who causes a lot of damage and is like kind of ludicrous is some kind of person of color.
She describes him, I highlighted it, he is a dark-skinned gypsy.
Yeah,
I've got Emily Bronte describes him.
So yeah, I was just going to say, there's a lot of conversation you'll see online about people saying like, oh, it's ambiguous where he actually comes from. It is true that you don't know exactly what country he comes from, but he is described as a dark-skinned gypsy, is the exact word. So it's pretty unambiguous that he's not white. We just don't know exactly like what's on his passport, but sure. And then Emerald Fennell, when she has been asked about this, has basically said that she cast Jacob Elordi because he was the person, he looked like the person that she imagined when she first read Wuthering Heights, which is like, well, okay. And then she's also said that the copy of Wuthering Heights that she had when she was a teenager, it had a picture of Heathcliff like drawn into it, and that drawing looked quite a lot like Jacob Elordi, so some sort of like, high cheekboned white person. So I assume that probably, she obviously hasn't. That's obviously a very problematic opinion in and of itself. And then she was obviously also very influenced by this edition where the publishers have very happily like whitewashed Heathcliff, which is, a whole thing. Tell me about what you actually thought about this. So what did you think about this shift? And also, what did you think about her intentions behind it? So I did have a lot of trouble online. I really couldn't see a lot of stuff from actual Emerald Fennell herself about the casting. I sort of got the impression she didn't really think about it, to be honest. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think.
I think I just thought she was just lazy at that point. And it's not like she couldn't have done it, because she was using the plot device that because of his like societal order, like him and Kathy couldn't get married. Like there was no reason why she couldn't have done it from a racial angle. Like, I think it was just lazy, and she wanted to cast Jacob Elordi and whatever, who was in the previous films. However, while I was rereading the book, because there's loads of discourse around Wuthering Heights and whether it's like a book about racism. But I read the book, and at one point I was like, this book feels kind of racist. And I don't believe that Emily Bronte is as progressive as people like to romanticize her as. Like, I've highlighted loads of like really awful language that she uses to describe Heathcliff and his descent into like becoming some savage. Like, I'm just gonna find some of the highlights that I made. He flung himself into the nearest seat, and on my approaching hurriedly to ascertain if she had fainted, he gnashed at me and foamed like a mad dog and gathered her to him with greedy jealousy. And then she continues to talk about him like that all the time, in like this really kind of like visual descriptive way of how like beastly and savage he looked. And I was just like, I think she's being racist right now. And I didn't find that the book was progressive in the way that people like to think it is.
I'm not a literary scholar or a historian, so I don't really know what her intention was in terms of the racial nature of that character. Because maybe you could argue, oh, if he's a gypsy, like he could just be a swarthy looking individual. And I think that's how almost everyone's chosen to interpret that. But I agree with you. There's more than that. There's more racially charged language in the book. And that, for me, it feels like it kind of feeds into that narrative of there's something fundamentally wrong with this person that goes beyond the fact that he had a bit of a tough childhood and upbringing. Because actually that really nice, wealthy gentleman brought him into his home, and that still didn't fix him. And her sister wrote Jane Eyre, and there's a definite person of color in that book who's also like similarly fundamentally bad and wrong and mad and insane. And so, I'm sure that it would have been almost impossible to not have that kind of racist view if you lived in that time. But I think it's a bit of a long bow to say that it's an anti-racist book. I don't think so.
Agreed.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also, I like that reference to Jane Eyre as well. Like, let's not think about Berser. It makes me, it's infuriating. I did find, for context, I was trying to figure out like what was sort of happening contextually at the time, and apparently around this time, Liverpool, so in the from the early 18th century to the early 19th century, Liverpool was one of the busiest slave trading ports in Britain, and it was transporting around estimated 1.5 million Africans across the Atlantic at this time. And Heathcliff in the novel arrives from Liverpool in 1771, so he arrives from a famously large slave trading port right in the peak of it, trading a huge number of Africans across to the US, presumably. So that's a lovely detail. So that's presumably,
it is a lovely,
lovely
detail.
It's a lovely thing to think about. How wonderful. And then I saw there's the British the Bronte Parsonage Museum has got a couple of possible contenders for people who were in the newspapers at the time that Emily Bronte was writing, who might have been the inspiration for Heathcliff. Some abolitionists, for example. There's one guy called Frederick Douglass who apparently matches who was in the papers a lot. They suspect might have been the person that she took inspiration from. But I completely agree. I did not find this book to be anti-racist at all. I really agree with this interpretation that I thought Heathcliff's racial identity was used as like evidence for how fundamentally wrong a person he was. And then a lot of the descriptions when he was like in a rage, exactly as you said, Jen, he just goes into this like animalistic, really really unflattering way of being angry compared to the other characters. So I really thought it was like a really horrible way of using someone who is anyone who's not white as being this kind of like subversive, wrong, animalistic type of person. And honestly, I really wish Emerald Fennell had like done something a bit more intentional with this. Like this casting of Jacob Elordi could have been a completely different narrative than what she made it. And reading about her thoughts about it, I was really like, I can't believe this is, you're just like, oh, I didn't imagine him. Like, it just became, you could have interpreted it as like, this is like kind of a correction of not having this kind of like cartoonish caricature of a character, but instead it's just like, oh, I find it hard to imagine a person of color as like a main character. Like, that's basically, yeah. I'm like, so you just got a new issue instead of trying to rectify an older issue. Like, that's awesome.
Can I just read a really good comment that I read on a Reddit thread? But when I had this thought, I was like, this book feels really racist. I went and found this thread, and it's full of people that are like, the book is not racist, it's anti-racist, it's about racism, but it's not racist. I was like, oh, okay, weird. I scrolled down, and somebody eventually wrote this, and I thought it was really good. This comment thread is full of ahistorical takes on Wuthering Heights, defending it as if it were written today and removing it from its literary context. The context it lives in is one where, for 19th century writers, including liberal ones, making a character a racial outsider is a way of coding two things: them being different to their environment, and also suggesting to a white readership they are wild or uncivilized at heart. The latter is obviously a racist trope that speaks to the zeitgeist of Europe at the time. Writers like Emily Bronte are not immune to it, and I absolutely think it's being employed here. In the case of Heathcliff, he is mistreated and then he becomes the brutal individual which was foreshadowed when we first met him and learnt that he wasn't or may not have been white. And yeah, I just thought that I could have just read that out and rambling like I did, but that was my feeling, is that it has been romanticized as an anti-racist piece of work.
Totally. But I don't think that was her point. I don't think she wrote it to make a racial statement at all. But I think that's probably the reality of that facet of the character. Obviously I say that as a very ignorant person who doesn't know anything about the literary landscape of the time, really, and I don't know about the Bronte sisters or anything like that. But it just seems like that's probably the way it is, particularly with the context of Jane Eyre, which is a little bit more, that's definitely a black character or a character of colour. Whereas, like, I guess it isn't difficult to read the book and read Gypsy as like, oh, he's a European gypsy. Fine, but there's obviously more historical context to that, which makes that take less likely, I guess. And I agree. I think it's just pure, I don't want to be mean, but pure laziness. Like, she clearly just wanted to cast Jacob Elordi in that role, so she did. The end. And also,
I agree.
Margot Robbie, just the most, divine, beautiful woman. But that character's like 17.
So the first thing I said to Sarah is like, she's too old.
But of course she's not too old. But the point I'm making there is she wanted to cast Margot Robbie. She wanted to cast Jacob Elordi. She wanted to cast Alison Oliver very appropriately as Isabella. Like, I actually thought she was fantastic in that role and very well suited to it. So, obviously that's why she did that. She wasn't... I'm sure she wasn't trying to get away from the racial politics of it, but at the same time, obviously it's problematic to ignore that. There was, like, I guess you could say there was like colorblind casting because a person of like a Indian actor or person with Indian heritage was cast as Edgar Linton, and he's a super white dude in the book.
Yeah, I would really like to talk about that actually if we're ready to slightly move on. So you have two people. There's two of the main characters in the film are people of color. So you have Shazad Latif, who plays Edgar Linton, who's got Pakistani heritage, and Hong Chow, who plays Ellen, and she's got Vietnamese heritage. So I think I said this to you at the time, Jim, when we walked out of the cinema. I was like, those two characters in the adaptation of the film, to me, Ellen feels more vindictive and she's more manipulative and like someone who creates bad things happening. And Edgar is way less flattering in the film than he is in the book, in my opinion.
Oh, do you think?
Do you know what I mean? I loved
him in the book. I was like, oh, Edgar.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Sorry, did I say that the wrong way around? I think in the film he's a much less likable character. Like he's this kind of in the way character who's kind of gets in the way of this like love.
So you didn't like him in the film as much.
Sorry, let me start that again. I do apologize. Let me say this properly. So I felt like Ellen, the character of Ellen in the film, I thought was someone who more than in the book, got in the way of people and was kind of hindering all this love, and was kind of more of a unlikable character, that it was like, oh, bloody Ellen interfering again. And I felt like Edgar in the film was kind of similar, where he was more of a character getting in the way of Cathy and Heathcliff, much more than he is in the book. In the book, he's actually an extremely sensible character. I think he's the least shit character by far, in my opinion.
Oh, that's so interesting.
But do you know what I mean? I felt like in both of those characters, I was like, oh, it's a bit unpleasant that these two characters are both kind of more. I don't really know the word that I'm looking for. They're kind of in the way more.
Yeah,
they're like more of a.
But I actually found him. I found him more sympathetic in the movie, and I think it's because in the book there is that bit where everyone's a child together, and he's actually a bit of a dick, and he has some qualities that his nephew has, like Linton Jr., Heathcliff's son. They share some qualities of being like feeble, sort of milquetoast, French Duke types. And then in the movie, he's more of a strapping, young, handsome, wealthy man. And I found him more likable, but totally agree with Nellie. She's way more. Yeah, she has more agency, but as a result, like it's not very nice the way she uses it. She is vindictive most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I might be reading too much into it, but I thought his character was more like ridiculous Edgar.
I'd say he was more
getting in the way.
Sap in the. That's probably a UK term. Just a bit, simpering, but he's very sweet and lovely, but he's just a bit of a sap, in the film. However, I did think, so I really liked him in the film, and I did think he had a moment that probably the moment I started crying and then didn't stop crying until it finished, is when Heathcliff turns up and Edgar says to him, don't go in there, you don't want to see her. And I just, that recognition of how much they loved each other, I was like, Edgar, you're such a sap, but I love you. Yeah, I just thought, he didn't have much autonomy, bless him.
Yeah, maybe I'm being too harsh on Emerald, but the switch away from Heathcliff being a person of colour and to Ellen, I
reckon she was completely oblivious to it. I reckon she's just
I think so.
Yeah, like you said, it's just blind casting, and has just not really thought about the fact that she ought to have cast an actor of colour to play Heathcliff, and maybe the vindictive one who's manipulating the whole thing should have been a white person, right? I just think she completely ignored the whole thing. And then because you can't find anything, because I don't think she knows how to defend herself other than to say she didn't think about it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. What is she meant to say? And that I don't think that excuses not having thought about it, but it seems obvious to me. She was like, this is my vision for it. It's a bodice ripper. These hot people are going in it. These are the hot people I had in mind. The end. And they could have been anyone. They could have been people of colour, but they weren't, because that wasn't how she imagined it. And so here we all are.
Yeah. I still just can't believe she said that, on the red carpet, I think it was. She was like, I just didn't think about it.
I'm just lazy.
But I mean, again, not in her defence, but it's easy, right, to not think about the race thing, because we almost expect stuff from this time to be a bit racist, and you're never shown depictions of Heathcliff that actually even correspond with the book and depict him as he is in that. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, your mental image, if you're shown, an artist's imagining of him is a white person, which is just sort of propagating that.
Yeah, he's a lot like Jesus in that way, isn't he?
He's very like Jesus in that way, yeah. Another criticism I heard of the movie was that there weren't enough, that Margot Robbie wasn't from Yorkshire and Cathy's from Yorkshire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I can't speak to that. I'm not across the
I saw some amazing
geopolitics of the UK
Instagram reels of really Yorkshire women superimposing themselves into a Margaret, and it was so funny. I just loved all of that.
It's so good.
She should have cast Jodie Comer.
Jessica Knappett
she should have been able to do a Yorkshire accent.
She's in it. Jessica Knappett's in it for 2 seconds, and I was like, "This is so fantastic." Jessica Knappett's in this. She's wonderful and hilarious and extremely Yorkshire, and she's in it for one scene. She cleans up Martin Clunes' vomit.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
That is so funny.
Yeah, it was really disappointing because
so
I was like, this is fantastic. I can't wait to...
I can't quite imagine her as Kathy, I'm going to be honest.
Well, no.
She's a little bit slapstick. As much as I like her. Would you recommend, in terms of what would you actually recommend, if someone for some reason has got to this point and hasn't watched or read, what would you recommend? Would you recommend like watching both, like absorbing both, doing one, doing the other?
I think I've seen some people, again, and all the like discourse on the internet, people trying the book after having read the film and realizing how hard work it is. Like it's a classic. It's not an easy read, so it's not a worthwhile read. I think it's probably, I still gave it 3 stars this time round. Like, I don't really read classics. I find them hard work. Like, it's one of the easier ones because it is dark and gothic and slightly different. If you're not into that, then I think the book is hard work. And I've just watched the film. Also, the adaptations of the book are probably worth doing. But again, I maybe wouldn't go into the film blind either. Maybe have a little Google of what Emerald Fennell's work is like.
I reckon if you're going to consume both, I do think you should read the book first because they're so different. I think it's going to be a more unpleasant experience to engage with Cathy and Heathcliff in book form than it is in movie form, and for that reason, I'd read before I would see this adaptation. I don't know what the other ones are like, obviously. I haven't seen them, but yeah, I'd recommend both because I think the book is so fascinating and just like, baffling and shocking to readers to this day, like, is one hot take I saw on it, which I think is true. I don't think there are parts of the movie that are out there, but I don't think that anyone who has seen Saltburn is going to bat any eyelids at this at all. You'll be guys, you're going to be fine.
You might be, in my case, ever so slightly disappointed.
Well, but it is I thought it was in a completely different way to the book because she's actually changed the fundamental nature of the two main characters quite a lot. It hits very differently, and it's more of a palatable traditional movie, and it's visually stunning. I thought the acting was really good. Issues with the casting notwithstanding, definitely worth watching.
Yeah, I don't know if I made that clear. I thought all the actors did an incredible job.
Yeah.
Like Margot Robbie
so good
for being Australian did an awesome job. I can see why she is sort of like awkwardly old, but she does an awesome job. And then Jacob Elordi does an awesome job. Martin Clunes, best on ground,
gold medal,
unbelievably good,
the MVP of the Wuthering Heights film.
Yeah, Alison Oliver? Did you say who played Isabella? Was like awesome, really funny. And then Hong Chau, who played Ellen, I think also played that character really, really well.
Just so good.
Yeah, I really like such a really understated, clever performance. I think I thought it was really good.
And the kid actors were good.
Yeah, they were fine. Yeah, sure. The one who played Kathy was pretty feral. I quite liked her. She was a good Kathy. I thought she was
the boy is, I can't remember his name. Is there was the Netflix series Adolescence that won loads of awards. And he went on to win, oh God, what's the equivalent of the Oscars in the TV world? Can't remember. The big prizes, anyway. Emmy, yes. And another one. So he is the boy in Adolescence.
Okay. Owen Cooper.
That's the one. I did think the kids, I cry at anything just to, set the scene. But I did think the ending was sad, right? Until it flipped back to the children at the start. And I was like, oh, God, that's it. I'm gone. Me and Sarah were like, sniffle, walking out. Yeah, I did think something about kids having a cute little relationship that, was very sweet.
Or the purity of...
Yeah.
I guess you get such a good sense of the length of time.
Yeah, it started as something really pure and that was forged in the fires of their, abusive childhoods, and that's not what happens in the book. But that was the reimagined plot, and it worked really. It was emotionally effective.
It's a beautiful story at the end of the day. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's, if you're interested in like film adaptations of books, like if it's like you're like thinking about, I think this is a really good one to read and watch, because there's so many interesting choices, and I think it's really interesting to think about choices that you make to translate something to film. I think it's more interesting than just watching like a straight adaptation.
Definitely,
that's quite true to the book. This is cool. Definitely cool to like do with like your book club or friends that you may have. I think it's an interesting one. And if you figure out what the book means, then you may tell us.
Do write in.
We would love to hear. Please write in and tell us. And actually, I'll tell you how you can do that. So you can follow us on Instagram. We're at Bookcast Club. I think we also have a TikTok. We're at Bookcast Club as well on TikTok. You can email us at thebookcastclub@outlook.com. And if you would like to contact us on Patreon as well, we have a Patreon where we do extra episodes per month, as Jenny said. So we hope you like the episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Jen, and thank you so much, Cobby, because I really enjoyed this conversation with you guys. So thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me on.
Please, thank you. And we will be back with you next month for the June episode. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.